To see that. Fantastic.
Perfect. Okay, great. So yeah, so welcome to sort of Nina's house. It is an experimental, sustainable retrofit in South Tottenham, designed, I would say, in collaboration with the client, Nina and Co, and with us at Raw. It's a warm, resilient home using predominantly natural materials. Nina's house is fossil fuel free. So one of the first things that we did on the project was move the gas supply. And then we installed a heat pump, which is just hidden behind this brick wall here. And it's low energy, rich in tactile beauty. And I guess what the client really likes to sort of say, and very much part of her ethos, is a quiet protest against demolition culture and a hopeful step towards more natural retrofitting. So I think the collaboration element is really, really important to emphasize here because, as we all know, working with the clients with their own priorities can be very tricky. And in this instance, Nina and Co, or Nina Woodcroft, her company is Nina and Co. Her priority is circular economy design, working with natural materials, and really, really passionate about this. So this was a project for her and also her own house. She's used to working predominantly on retail restaurants. One of her fit outs are here. Very passionate, very, very driven. And I always question whether this project would be possible if we didn't have that collaborative approach. Not sure. And her brief was really clear but ambitious. So right from the start, it was all about reducing energy consumption, removing gas, prioritizing the reuse or use of natural materials, at the same time creating a welcoming family home that inspires others. So fairly ambitious. And our role was very much providing sort of technical expertise, planning guidance, navigating her through the design process, and also being like a design reviewer through her ideas. The existing house, it was a 1970s floor mat clergy house, cold, leaky, uninspiring, no insulation at all, warped PVC single glazed windows that you can see here. And internally was full of small enclosed spaces unfit for contemporary living. And interestingly, it's in the 95th percentile for air pollution nationally because there's quite a big main road to the left here. So that was something to take into account when we were looking at the air and how we can clean the air coming into the building and make sure it's a lovely place to be in. Unlike most projects, this is one of the early concept sketches, there was a decision taken not to extend the house. That's quite a key element because we really then tried to work with Nina to make use of the space that was there. And instead of using the money that would go on an extension, we brought the porch and sort of the garage here into the thermal envelope. And we spent the budget predominantly and also the energy in the design process towards improving the performance of the building and the green infrastructure. This is one of the sketch plans that we looked at, which almost pretty much how it was built. I think this wall wasn't built here. Um, so the once fragmented ground floor plan is now open and flowing, sort of perfect for a young family. She has a young child. There's space to dance with friends, make long train tracks, and a retreat sort of has this U-shaped layout here. So you've got these sofas in the corners, so you can still have some sort of privacy and retreat into this U-shaped layout. The kitchen is very much at the heart of this, and there's some beautiful crafted joinery, which I'll come on to slightly later. The cork. So the exterior is wrapped in this thick cork with soft round edges. It's been chosen for its carbon negative credentials, its minimal installation build-up, and its regenerative harvesting. So as the cork regrows off on the bark of the trees, it sequests more CO2 from the atmosphere. We looked at a number of different external insulation alternatives. What we didn't love about them was the fact that they weren't natural. The fact that the ones that were natural, you still had to apply an external render on top of, where this, it gives you everything you need and it still has this beautiful tactile quality to it. So this is a sort of a sketch detail here. I've got more drawings if you want to see afterwards. But in theory, this was the existing wall construction. Not in theory, this is the existing wall construction. There's a breathable lime-based parge coat here, which protects the brickwork. And then you've got your first layer of 50 mil of insulative cork, which is mechanically fixed back to the brickwork. And then you have your adhesive waterproof layer here. So that actually provides the waterproof coating for the building. And then a final layer of 50 mil expanded cork, which has a fireproof coating on to meet building regulations. I mean, the fireproof coating then has another coating on top of it to stop it sort of running and turning silver over time. Building regulations kind of lost their minds about the cork. They didn't know what to do with it. We had a couple of weeks sort of stressful weeks where they weren't going to approve the drawings just because of the cork. They had a problem with the fact that the cork absorbs water, and therefore once it absorbs water, it won't act as well as it should do as an insulative material. So we had to get around this by showing them a ton of examples, or well, about 10 examples where it's been used in the UK. We had to get all the Portuguese and Spanish literature on the product translated into English for them. And even then, they still weren't happy with it. But what they were satisfied with the insulation we were already putting into the building, into the cavity, that we met the U values without the cork there. So they saw the cork as a decorative feature rather than insulative. And that's how we sort of got around this sort of computer says no approach. They're fine, box ticked, moved on. The cork cladding is expected to last about 15 to 25 years. Beyond that, we're thinking about applying a lime render over the top to refresh the appearance and seal the insulation indefinitely. So far, the only issue we've had is a fox chewing the bottom of the cork in one of the corners. So we have a metal trim at the bottom of the cork, but perhaps that could have been a bit longer. So anyway, these things you never think about until the issue pops up on site. So we don't just have the cork insulation. There's a lot more going on in this building. It's performing very, very hard. So there was one wall, which is this wall here, which was we couldn't access it externally because it was too narrow downside passage. So it's insulated internally using lime plaster containing cork granules. There's also PIR underfloor insulation, recycled plastic in the loft, graphite coated poly beads in the cavity, wood fiber insulation. And then there's also, we ended up using sheets wall acoustic insulation here as well. We tried our best to avoid the PIR, but where it sits above the concrete slab, it just works best in terms of cost, longevity, and performance. All of this creates a really, really robust thermal envelope. And then we had a mechanical ventilation system, MVHR system here, bringing fresh and filtered air into the home all year round. So great, comfortable temperature, good comfortable temperatures, good indoor air quality. And there was a huge effort was made to improve air tightness using special paint and tapes. And we collaborated closely with an energy consultant to refine and improve all the details. Like I said, an air source heat pump was installed to the front of the house, and the glazing was replaced with a mix of high performance triple glazing and this innovative suspended film that is less energy intensive to produce and achieves a superior U value. Internally, the lime plaster, which is here, was used as far as the budget allowed, along with standard gypsum plaster, which was left exposed. So Nina, being very much into sort of leading the interiors, the overall design, she really ran with the interiors, and we just provided the technical sort of help in order to deliver what she wanted. But I've got to say, this is really sort of her baby in terms of the vision for the inside of the house. But it's been amazing seeing it and being in the space as well. It's so warm and cozy to be in. So all the plaster really has this VOC free transparent glaze, which was an aesthetic and budget conscious choice. The cork was also chosen for the floor, which is only about 4 mil, and it works really, really well with the underfloor heating. And there was some floorboards which were salvaged from the original demolition works, which were kept, sanded down, and been reworked into the ceiling cladding here. So at the heart of it all is this kitchen, which is sort of this beautiful, calm, luminous space designed and sourced by Nina. It was fabricated ultra locally using UK-made tri-board from British Douglas fir. So Nina found the Scottish Douglas fir, sourced it directly, and then designed it and worked with this really fantastic local joiner to bring it all together. I think obviously, this was ended up being a bit of a nightmare for the project because there was a massive delay with all the Scottish Douglas fir. But in the end, it was worth it. It was absolutely beautiful. We went down the route of looking at all the different sort of veneers that we could have got, but found that even though there maybe the timber was grown in the UK or Europe, the veneer was then sent to like even as far as say like Canada or America to be veneered, then sent back. So there was a ton of research done into actually where do these materials come from, and that therefore a real push to try and use local as much or UK source, and then working with local joiners to reduce the carbon footprint of the design. There's this beautiful tactile monolithic kitchen island. So we've got this here. So this is crafted from a London plane tree, which was felled by Westminster Council here, from Soho Square. So it's a fantastic company called Fallen and Feld that takes these trees and reuses them for different items. So we worked together with this company to deliver this amazing worktop, and then it was made by the amazing joiner, which is around the corner. And then you've got a Smiles recycled plastic countertop around the sink, which adds practicality and contrast. This is the view as it is at the moment from the streets. So you can see the Salvation Army to the left and the house to the right. The cork itself, when it was first installed, was really, really, really dark brown. But quite quickly it's silvered over time. And now apparently it's meant to go back to this dark brown color. I'm not quite convinced by that. But I've got to say, when it was dark brown, it really stood out even more on the streets. But this sort of really sort of soft silver color really sort of makes it quietly stand out, shall we say. You can see here quite nicely with this image how the cork is put together as literally just these blocks which are stacked on top of each other. So at one point on the project when we imported the cork from Spain, so it went from Portugal to Spain and then to the UK, but then it had to sit in the house for a decent amount of time to breathe. We had all this cork stacked and piled up in these two top floor bedrooms here, which was, yeah, good fun to see. The contractor who used this never actually worked with cork before, so there's a lot of shown in the videos of how to install it. And I've got to say the suppliers were absolutely fantastic in providing all that technical information to their guys. So they know how to apply it, get the coatings right, so you have that waterproof coating and then the finish coating as well. So the house now stands out gently on the street. Passers-by often stop to stroke the cork, and then conversations flow. There's a school opposite, so school children often ask questions about this house. So it invites curiosity. And I think even the owner had Jehovah's Witnesses who knocked on the door, and instead of talking about becoming a Jehovah's Witness, ended up talking about the cork for about 10, 15 minutes. They're really intrigued by the material, and it sort of sparks moments of connection for the family and the client with their wider community. These are some of the sort of facts and figures. So we very much see the project as a work in progress. And together with the client, we're tracking the building performance. So overall energy bills we've estimated they're down by about 60 to 70%. And I think even more impressively, using these sort of carbon calculations here, you can see that they sequestered twice as much carbon as we emitted. And I think that's largely due to the cork sort of regrowing after it's been harvested and taking more carbon out of the atmosphere. And then I think the one thing that maybe hasn't been right or we've been disappointed by is the air tightness. We use a ton of tape everywhere around the windows, up to the loft. But we found because we didn't do the loft conversion here, there's still some air leaking out the top here. So maybe one day when the loft conversion is done, that could be solved. But one issue that we've had is these Quartizo sliding doors. It says sort of on the tin it has a certain building performance, but it's just not meeting those credentials at all. And there's sort of that gets out underneath this frame here. So that's been a bit disappointing that the air tightness hasn't been as good as it could be. So I think that's a real lesson in how hard it is to do it on existing buildings, but also the products you're working with. They may say it has a certain standard, but it does it. Yeah. So outreach. Now that the project's completed, it's become a teaching tool. We've been widely published, given talks, hosted workshops to share what's worked and what hasn't, and it's hopefully created this ripple effect that spreads far beyond the street and the project itself. This is an article taken from The Guardian. And then I've got some before and afters just to show you. Obviously, you've seen the house where it was and where we got to now. So you can see here, obviously, the windows were replaced, they adjusted in size. We brought the garage into the thermal and door and porchway into the thermal envelope. Planning, I'm not quite sure what happened with planning. The cork was shown on the drawings for planning, but my feeling is that they didn't actually pick it up, and they were more worried about the impact of losing this garage door in the streets and this sort of blank facade here, and that sort of distracted them for the fact that the whole house was clad in cork, because that wasn't raised as a query at all. And then internally, again, you can see the before and after. So that is some of the sort of the ceiling here that was reworked into the decorative cladding. And there's the living room space, the beer, so that it was opened up towards the rear, and all the walls were removed. And the back of the house here. So these curved corners, these had to be bespoke made. And we sort of modeled them on SketchUp, and then they were sent across and made in Spain. The whole idea, it softens the entire building, but also we were worried about how the cork may wear over time as people come in and out of the building here. So the softness really prevents it getting chipped away, and it also creates these sort of beautiful details here. Yeah, that's everything.
Cool, fantastic. So I didn't interrupt you just because you were in a nice flow, really, and I've got lots of comments coming up, so we can address them now. In fact, let's go through them before I start asking my questions. In fact, Tash has asked a question that I was going to ask, so starting with Tash, she's asked what the approximate cost of construction was, and I suppose, and how did that compare with a project where there wasn't so much emotion invested in, the circularity element of it, etc. So, I mean, how much of I'm assuming this came at a premium.
Oh yeah, definitely. So it was, well, there was a budget that we were told with to begin with.
Hmm.
And then what we ended up spending was about £350,000 on the project. So I think I've been told, because the client was quite protective over that, I was
Yeah.
involved on it up to a point with the construction cost. I've been told that includes VAT and fees, albeit our fees, I would say, were fairly low for this project because we saw it more as an opportunity to learn from rather
Hmm.
than sort of be profitable on.
Yeah.
then that raises the question, I always think about this, I'm sure you get it on other clients, is, from what was paid for the house, what was spent,
Yeah.
what's the value of the house now? I don't think they add up, should I say, but I
Mhm.
think this has more value to her as a
Sure.
project, um, professionally as well.
And she's planning on living there for quite some time.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, so we've done drawings for the loft, so the plan would be if they need more space to go into the loft.
Yeah. Um, and you mentioned about the life cycle of the cork. Um, so is easier just affixing or applying lime render over the cork, or does anything else have to happen before? I mean, has
Yeah,
anyone else done that?
well, that's the thing. We don't fully know, to be honest, because a lot of the court projects we found in the UK were fairly recent, like in the
Mhm.
last 5 years or so,
Yeah.
maybe slightly longer. So there's one option is to sand it down. I think that's the preference from the client, and we've been told it is possible. I'm not as convinced by that. So then I think, yeah, maybe just applying this lime plaster to just
Hmm.
shore everything up, it may be the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see. I'll let you know in 15
Yeah.
years.
In a long
And also
way.
they say, 15 to 20 years or however long it was. And
Yeah.
again, do we actually know that? We don't know.
No, cool. Alex, would you like to come off mute?
I will, yeah. So, hi, very interesting project. Thanks a lot for the presentation on that. I actually did a retrofit in Guildford. It's been completed for a year or so now, which used cork as an external wall insulation. And similar to you, it was a cavity wall in a 1930s building. So we filled the cavity with EPS, put cork on the outside, and then rendered it with a lime render, which is pretty straightforward to do, and it looks really good. So it's definitely something that you could do over time. What I thought
Mm.
was interesting, the cork that we used was really crumbly and quite challenging for the guys on site. And I'm assuming that whatever product you had was something different, so you could actually form it and not have it disintegrate when you were cutting it or fitting it on site.
Yeah, definitely. It was really, really tough, sort of quite hard to sort of break off. So it sounds like it must have been a different product then completely, yeah. Because in some instances they had to cut like around the windows and there's no problem at all doing that.
Yeah, so we use an insulation. It's from Mike Y. I think it was a supply.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they're great. We spoke to Mike White loads. I don't think we actually maybe sourced too much from them, but they were so helpful throughout the whole project, I've got to say.
Alex, did you have a couple of other points you wanted to enlarge upon?
So yeah, there's a couple of things really. One was whether you insulated below the DPC, and if you did, what you used for that. And the other point was really about, I guess, following up on your air tightness and your disappointment in that, because you should have been able to, obviously get I think, a better score than that with the amount of works. And it's whether there's, it's probably, as you said, that eaves junction, or whether you need to do some more air tightness work over the ceilings on the upper floor and into the eaves to resolve that. There must be quite a big
Yeah,
hole somewhere, is what I'm saying.
yeah, I think so. I think basically a bit of both. I think it's definitely the eaves, definitely that gap, because ultimately to really improve the air tightness for the gap whether it goes into from the first floor ceiling to the loft, we had to remove. Ideally, we would remove some of the ceiling, but we didn't do that because that wasn't part of the budget. Because we just focused on the
Right.
ground floor.
And did you look at the interfloor zone
Yeah. So what between the
where the joists go into the inner leaf of the cavity wall in the
Yeah,
interfloor zone?
we did, and we couldn't get as far as we could have got to because we didn't remove the ceiling. So we did it from above, which has not been ideal. So that's where it's all leaking, I think.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
bit that, yeah, from quite a lot of experience with this, there'll be a lot of holes along there.
right, fine,
Yeah,
fine. And I think also the Cortese, because we did the smoke test, and obviously you could just see the smoke just literally leaking out of the flush threshold.
yeah, that was my other
And what
point really. Is that, I mean, I've been to a client's house that had tried to do a passive house using those windows before. They always seem to perform really badly. They're just a brush
Yeah,
fit, aren't they? And really, you need a heavier lift and slide system. And I know clients always want slimline systems, but I don't think they exist that are airtight, unfortunately.
that's what we came to the conclusion of. It's like you need something that really lifts up and then secures back down, like really fixes in almost like a wedge system. or like a really heavy timber door that locks into place, but not on these thin minimal frames. So, then there's this balance about aesthetics, I guess, the link to the garden, and achieving the air tightness. Because also, I think when we were looking at the thermal performance of the building, one of the recommendations, for example, was to remove the roof lights because of potential overheating. But obviously, the client made a decision. It sort of created quite like a beautiful effect in the corner of the living room. So it's always that balance of that beauty versus practicality or performance. And then I think you asked about, let me show you the Cork detail here that we ended up going here. I don't know how well this comes out because obviously it's on a white background, but you can see here at the bottom here, which is 150 up from the floor, external floor. And then that was, it was, yeah, XPS plinth board adhered to the masonry wall. And then we had 3 coats of lime render to finish it off.
Okay, thanks a lot. Good stuff.
You can see some of the tape here that we used as well to get this air tightness around the windows.
I think that was one of the questions from someone else, is whether you move the windows out actually, but as you can see on that drawing.
Yeah, we moved it out.
But you've got them in the outer leaf, haven't you? Not in the insulation there on the...
Yeah, correct. Yeah, no, we couldn't do the insulation because we had to build a whole box around it, and then it just created a bit of a nightmare with the weatherproofing. So we decided just to sit it back in line with the cavity, but then overlap the insulation here over the frames. I think, well, we couldn't do it here, but over here. And then I don't have the plan detail, but we just basically tried to overlap the insulation as much as we could with the frame.
Cool. Cheers, Craig. Thanks, Alex, for those questions. Um, just picking up on some of the other comments in the chat. Sorry, Summer was asking about how did you finish the lime plaster internally?
Yeah, so that was just a VOC transparent glaze just to stop it basically crumbling or being damaged.
Okay. And are the kitchen cabinet doors, do they have a veneer?
No, they are. I've got a great photo. Let's have a look if I can find this photo. They're not. They are tri-ply, and therefore you can see the build-up of the tri-ply when you open up the doors. Let me just see if I can dig out a photo. Bear with me one sec. Yeah, here we go. So this image here of the drawer open shows you how it's here.
Hmm.
So it's the tri-ply. So then it's the Douglas fir is then, yeah, the finished layer.
And on that, because you mentioned about how the client was, sourcing the materials, deciding on what to do, there was a lot of sort of research done. Then, there's a desire to go as local as possible when using the trades. How much time did that add to the whole project? And
Yeah.
project stop at any point, or was it delayed at any point because of the extra miles you were going?
Yeah, so that's where I think Nina did a ton of the research because I just don't think we would have had the time that our field allowed for the amount of research that was needed to find these products.
Hmm.
I think she spent weeks and like days devoted to finding the right material, especially trying to hunt down this Scottish Douglas fir tri-ply. And then the kitchen was ended up being about 2 or 3 months late because there was an issue in the warehouse, with it being delivered and delayed and built.
Yeah.
So then that had a consequential impact. They still moved into the property, they just didn't have a finished kitchen.
Right. Okay. Oh, so they bought this property with a view to making these changes. They weren't living there already then.
They weren't living there already, no.
No. Okay. So when the Cork was acclimatizing upstairs, it was an empty property at that stage as well.
Correct.
Then. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Fine. And how's the impact been on your business? I mean, I know this received a lot of PR and press. Have people come to you? Do you know of any other practices that have been approached with clients talking about Cork and what have you? I mean, when I saw it, well, my experience of Cork is like sort of 1970s internal bathroom tiles, and I mean it's quite a it's not Marmite, but it was like whoa, that's really different. And the more I look at it, and the more I see those photos, like it's stunning, but it's very unusual.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's why I've had people inquire about doing it as a rear extension, cladding their rear
Yeah,
extension. But then I mentioned one was, I think, in the countryside, and I mentioned about the foxes
yeah,
chewing, and they were like, no, that's not going to be for us. So we've had a lot of inquiries, but not many
yeah,
people actually sort of like biting, should we say. And
yeah,
then we've had other practices come in to give talks and just show them how we've done the cork detailing because they're
yeah,
working with it already.
yeah. Cool.
And then we're now using it we're doing a commercial project in King's Cross, and we're using cork flooring throughout, and that sort
Yeah,
of led from this project, definitely. And what we're trying to do now is trying to piecemeal, take different elements of this project and apply it to different parts, because not everyone wants that full
sure.
package because it
Yeah,
is so unusual and bespoke, different.
yeah,
But then trying to see what we can implement where.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Just picking up on the foxes. And I suppose David made a point. He was just asking about, I suppose if it's in Tottenham, it's on near a very, very busy road. I mean, vandalism could be an issue. I mean, you were saying how difficult it was to cut. So, I mean, how susceptible could it be to just plonkers coming along and doing some damage?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Someone could easily come and do that. We haven't really thought about that or discussed it with the
No.
client. But yeah, in theory, they could come and start. If they wanted to chip away at it, they could if they
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Let's hope she doesn't upset anyone on the street.
No, 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 exactly. Yeah, I don't know how you legislate for
It's
that.
a fair point. Yeah, it's funny. No, I never thought about that. And then I guess if there was like graffiti or anything, it could be sanded down. But
Yeah.
the actual chipping of it, that is a risk. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. How many actually? How many bedrooms? How big's the house? I think you said
It is three
16.
bedrooms,
Three, right? Okay, top.
3 bedrooms, one bathroom upstairs. And so the budget didn't include refurbishing upstairs. It was all about the ground floor. And then a lot of the money went on the infrastructure. The
Hmm.
cork alone was I think about £40,000
Right. Okay.
because it was expensive. And then she had to import it and pay import tax on top of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um. So I'm just reading Matt's comments. No. Oh, he's just making comparisons with a deep retrofit that they've did a year back using wood fiber. Um. Um. Layer. Seems called. Oh, right. Well, Aglaya has asked about or recognizing the cork does have 25 years lifespan. I mean, we've covered um, how you're likely to apply lime render afterwards. Or does it completely degrade that you can't put lime render on it?
Again, I guess we don't know because
Yeah.
ultimately a lot of the testing that's been done, because it's used widely, as you guys probably know, in Spain and Portugal, used more widely, shall we say.
Yeah.
Obviously, their climate is a hell of a lot different to ours.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
well,
No,
yeah,
you'll know. Marcelo's asked about fire protection. I mean, well, you spoke about that, but the cork's treated to comply to regulations.
yeah. So that was treated back in the factory, so it came with a protection, and that's been I've spoken to other architects, and that's the problem that they had with it when they sort of ordered it. I think just online was then
Hmm.
getting. It was about the spread of flame with the neighbours and getting the building inspector to sign that off. Like I said here, that wasn't the issue at all. It was more about what happens when it's wet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, did not see that one coming.
No. Not as long as it doesn't expand like a foam,
Yeah, I know. That's what.
or sponge. Chris has asked, did you manage to hide the MVHR pipework, or was it a choice to leave it exposed?
um, it was a bit of both. The conversation was originally to expose it, but then we ended up hiding it, in joinery and behind plasterboard ceilings. But then in the actual bathroom and the toilet downstairs where the plant room is, that's all exposed.
Right.
The actual kit itself, all the ductwork, everything's out there visible, and that
Okay.
that was on purpose.
And then, forgive my ignorance, you would think I'd learned something after hosting these webinars, but with the air tightness not being as um, uh, well as low as you wanted it to be, How does that impact on the use of the MVHR? I mean, does that naturally, does it just work? It's just working in the background, or does it sort of self-regulate depending on the conditions that have, that have occurred based on the air tightness?
Um, Good question. I actually don't know that. I actually don't know about the day-to-day operation of it. What I would say though is what's mad is you know the filter for the MVHR. I'm sure you guys already know all of this stuff, but how what surprised me was how black
Yeah.
it was.
Well, after,
So I
yeah,
after like a year, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
a year and a half, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? You
yeah,
don't realize. I remember having this conversation with her when she was when we were looking to try and reduce the costs of the project about how necessary these things are.
yeah,
Um, and I potentially naively said, "Oh, why don't we just look at removing that? You know, just opening windows, getting fresh air in." But then just sort of talked about, well, is the air we're breathing actually clean? Because we don't know.
yeah.
And that was, yeah. So that's been a valuable lesson throughout this project.
Well, especially if the house is in a, the 95th percentile in terms of poor
Yeah,
quality air, and yeah, I mean, yeah.
which we found out after the project. That wasn't
Oh,
one of the
right,
things we
right,
found out
okay,
after. Yeah, but
right,
yeah,
right,
exactly. That's one of the things you think it's all clean because you can't see it, but you actually don't
yeah,
realize.
yeah. What you're breathing in,
Yeah,
absolutely. So let's just go through Matt. I mean, yeah, we've pushed the windows out. Alex mentioned his points. I mean, Russell's asked about challenges with obtaining planning permission, but again, he said it was more to do with the garage, the change of the exterior, not necessarily
yeah.
materials.
So I did what we all do as architects is didn't put too much information on our planning drawings. So just put a hatch there and said it was Cork cladding, and it didn't bring it up at all. So my hunch is they didn't see it,
Yeah, yeah.
which wouldn't surprise me
No,
at
no, no,
all.
no, no. And then, I mean, why would, yeah. And yeah, I mean, I just look at the house previously and just see the horrible garage, but that's an issue because they don't like the change in that.
Yeah, they were worried about the impact on the street.
Yeah,
We were like, fine, that's what
yeah.
you're worried about. Let's go with that.
No, indeed. Cool. But if there aren't any more questions, but please, post now if you like to, or come off mute. I mean, what I would say is, it's fantastic for you to be able to share these learnings here, and also with everyone's engagement and questions they've asked. So, if anyone knows of any other projects that you'd particularly like to hear from in this level of detail, then ping me, let me know. It would be great. Um, but yeah, Craig, I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, no, I'm always looking at these things with what would I do and what if I had the opportunity to do something like this. And I suppose I would look at not necessarily having the whole house done in Cork, but picking up on what other potential clients have said about, the rear or part of an extension, etc. I think it's I love the quote or the recognition that, people always asking, can I touch your house? I think that's amazing, and it does look incredible. But also importantly, from our perspective and the purpose of meshwork and everything, she made a massive difference to, using circularity at its core and making sure that you're sort of trying to reduce the amount of energy, etc., that's being used. It was interesting to see what gone into that, and
Yeah,
and coming to you as a practice. If I don't mean to offend or anything, but it wasn't. This is the first time you've done this type of project, so it was interesting that like you've learned from that, and that gives inspiration for anyone else that can take great design and deliver it really. And it's a shame that it's always down to the individual or the practice that's driving this, and it's not the big business that's doing it. But hey,
yeah,
this is just that's just what we see day in day out.
yeah.
But no, I assume you just absolutely loved working on the project and the results.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were some moments when we didn't, but no, and we ended up working because we were a local practice at the time. We were
Yeah,
based around the corner.
yeah,
And then I still remember the first phone call that we had with Nina, which was telling me about this crazy project and how crazy ideas. And I was like, yeah, sounds too good to be true. Like, this is a fantastic opportunity to be a part of it.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I agree. That lesson, that learning is really, really important. But I think also is what amazes us, I'm sure you guys know, is the amount of time that's needed to actually deliver
Yeah.
these projects, the amount of research, because there's just not enough out there to find out about this information.
Hmm.
Even the carbon calculations, finding out all of that stuff, I couldn't find a software that had cork as one of the external cork cladding, a typical material that I could use as part of the carbon calculations at the time.
Yeah, I'll have to
So
see, just check with my colleagues at Mesh to see whether our carbon calculator includes cork. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, great project to be a part of. And
yeah.
yeah, happy to share. If anyone's got any more questions or wants some any more specific information, by all means, just get in touch. I'll put my email here in the chat.
Cool, thank you. I'll if you're okay sharing the deck with me, I'll upload it along with the video to Meshwork.
Yeah,
And I'll just put a hyperlink into LinkedIn as well for you guys. But no, thanks, Craig. Glad we could rearrange this one. Really interesting. So thanks for taking up your time today, and thanks for everyone else for asking them any questions. And yeah, we'll see you on another webinar. Cheers,
all right,
guys.
fantastic. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.